Kalle, great to speak to you. I guess in the UK, things got off to a disappointing start with the postponement of the Eubank Jr. against Liam Williams fight, but thankfully only a small postponement this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's an odd time, isn't it? You're not talking about, making fights around training camps and different sporting elements. You're looking at what certain governments are deciding, and it's not just the UK; it's other places we promote all over the world. And we've got planning shows at the moment in Germany, in Scandinavia, in Australia, and it's every country seems to bring their own dynamic. I mean, we've seen all the stuff around Djokovic this week, and I think there's going to be a lot more coming when it comes to sports, persons, events, and vaccinations, and different controls, and all the different dynamics. And that it's not a global thing. Everything is so regional. And you look at the UK, and there's still the issue we have with Wales, which we're hoping for a positive decision next couple of days. I know there's a big rugby union thing on there as well, which there's a lot of pressure on as well. So I mean, to be quite honest, I didn't know before the pandemic that there was a Prime Minister of Wales. So that's something new for me. So you're learning every day. No disrespect to the gentleman, but yeah, I don't know. I guess we're all learning every day, and that there's so many different laws between the different countries within the United Kingdom, which is I guess a very a long tradition. But for us in the sport, it just throws up so many different things. I mean, to think that you could do it in Bristol, which is across the river, and you can't do it 20 minutes down the road. It's bizarre, isn't it? It is bizarre, but hey, I guess sporting events isn't top of everyone's list, but it's certainly top of ours. So yeah, the headaches continue into 2022. We all thought it would be New Year's Eve, we'd celebrate away 2021, but hey, 2022 that hasn't changed too much.
So what is the latest when it comes to that fight? Do you think that you will be able to have fans there in Wales? If not, do you look at changing the venue to make sure that you can have spectators, even if it means bringing it back to England, potentially London, Manchester, somewhere like that?
Yeah, but there's always backup plans, but we're hoping very much that it takes place in Wales. I think Chris really relishes boxing in front of a big away fighter, let's say. We've seen it before. We've seen it against Yildirim when he went in front of all the Turkish fans. He likes that. We've seen that also from his father in the past. It sort of peps him up. He loved the fact that it's in Cardiff. So we're hoping that gets positive, that there's a positive decision around that this week. But of course, there's backup plans there.
And when it comes to Filip Hrgović, what's the latest with him? Because only a few days into
talking about backup plans, eh?
And he's struggling to find an opponent. Why is it so difficult, or why are these people turning him down?
Well, we're not really. I mean, the thing is, we're not struggling to find. Well, we are struggling to find an opponent, but the system is there. It's not like we're trying one guy, then who do we pick next? No, they're picked for us. They're picked. The IBF is very strict. So the people who don't know, the IBF orders are mandatory. The mandatory fights against the world champion, currently Alexander Usyk, who is contracted to fight against Anthony Joshua next. So the winner of this fight would fight the winner of that. That's the rules of the IBF. We have been in this process. We were in this process, the same process last year, where we go down the rankings. So Ortiz was the highest ranked challenger. So they ordered Ortiz versus Hrgović on January the 2nd. So already, what are we today? January 12th. Ortiz said no, despite in the ring after the fight saying he can't wait to fight Hrgović. We then moved on. Joseph Parker, he turned it down. Apparently, I saw a quote, it was about money. I don't know what money, because there's a purse bid situation. If you can't find a deal, you accept the fight and then you go to purse bids. that's the way boxing has worked for the last God knows how many decades. So there's nothing you say. It's not about the money. Can't be about the money because you are what you're worth in a purse bid. That is a public auction for. He turned it down. So Ortiz turned it down. Joseph Parker turned it down. Now we're at Tony Yoka. What can we say about Tony Yoka? Got gold medalist from France. He's had 2 days. He's got 1 day left, 24 hours to go. It's a bit like that Jack Bauer show. 24 hours. Let's see if it happens. It's Tony Yoka. If not, it goes on. And but the hope is that someone is going to accept in the next days. They basically every 3 days will go to the next in the rankings. But it makes a mockery of the rankings. Why do you want to be ranked and go around saying to everyone, I'm ranked 7 by the IBF? The whole purpose of that ranking is to fight for a world title. Or do you want to retire and say I was ranked number 7 in the IBF? No, you want to be a world champion. You want to fight the best. Well, we're not even saying Hrgović is the best. He's going to prove it in the ring. Take the challenge. Tony Yoka hopefully does. We'll see. If not, we go to the next one tomorrow. Exciting stuff.
Are you surprised that Joseph Parker hasn't taken the fight? He had that war with Derek Chisora, and for a man that wants to become a world champion once again, this is a pathway to getting a world title.
It is. At the same time, I'd say he's been a world champion. He's earned his corner. Let's say, does he really want to fight Filip Hrgović, who's never been a world champion? Hey, he's never really boxed anything special as a pro. He's never fought anyone special as a pro. But the thing is, people know Hrgović since 10 years. Since 10 years, he's been around. Even when he was boxing as in this pro amateur league, the World Series of Boxing, everyone knows about him. There's those Deontay Wilder sparring videos, but he put David Hay out the Tyson Fury fight in sparring. But that's sparring. So for them to really turn down this fight, ultimately, how can you say it's about money if you beat this guy, the next fight you're fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world? So it can't be about money, can it? I mean, you should take the fight for free. Take it. If you believe in yourself, take it, roll the dice, and then if you're so good, you're going to be boxing for the world title. Then there's plenty of money in it. But at the same time, I just think that people know so much about him, but it's almost become a bit of an urban myth. Like we're very confident, but at the same time, on paper, if you look at his record, we haven't fought anyone major yet in the pros. So, I just find it strange people aren't taking even the punt on it. So it must be something about his aftershave.
How do you feel about the heavyweight division? We've been asking the question this week. Is it a bit of a mess at the moment? What do you think?
Listen, the heavyweights are always a bit of a mess. Yeah, I mean, go back to the days of Lewis and Holyfield, and I think Lennox won it also at the not inside the ring. He was given the belt. If I remember correctly, was the story like there's been so many situations like that, but that sort of adds to the dramatics of it, the blockbuster fights. And let's face it, heavyweight boxing is flying at the moment. We've had fantastic fights, and that's ultimately what you want to see. But you want that drama in between. That's all part and parcel of it, and it's always been in the history of the sport. Go back to the Ali days of making fights, and the theatrics of making fights. It's on, it's off, and that's what you want to see, because when they walk to the ring and they stand, staring at each other across the ring before that bell goes, you feel all that storyline leading up to it. That's what makes big fights. So on the one hand, for us as promoters, it's a real pain in the backside. But for the public, I think it's just part of the soap opera of boxing, isn't it? And that adds to the event itself. But let's look at the bare facts of it. I mean, we've had, you just mentioned Chisora Parker, which was a cracker at the end of the year. But let's say with the contenders, so some great contender fights. But you also had 2 at the very highest level, of course, with Fury, Wilder 3, and with AJ Usyk. So you've got to look at that and say, if that is produced in 1 year of heavyweight boxing, that's fantastic for the sport, for the fans, for everyone involved.
How do you feel about contracted rematch clauses? Because yes, they were brilliant fights, the Wilder Fury fights, but when you think about it, 3 fights there, and with AJ taking on Usyk again, it just means that those other contenders have to wait a seriously long time to get their opportunities. So do we need to scrap these rematch clauses? If the public call for it, fair enough, we have them, but do we need to get rid of it as a contractual obligation?
I got to say, I use them far too much. I'll be shot down if I went in public and said no more rematch clause. I can't wait for my next negotiation with certain people. No, rematch clauses are part of the business. On this one, it was on AJ Usyk, for example, it was a mandatory, which makes it very rare that there's a rematch clause. Even, I don't know, I've seen examples in the past, with a mandatory, you generally don't give rematch clauses. The question is, was it from the AJ side who wanted a rematch clause in case they would lose, which I would assume is the case here. And, it wouldn't have been from the Usyk side, I don't think, because they wouldn't have had the power to push it through. But the fact that they accepted it from the Usyk side shows that they were bloody confident and bloody confident of doing it again. So it's an odd one, because generally in mandatory situations, there are no rematch clauses. They don't really, I'd say 80, 90%. And especially at that high level, it's a strange one. But at the same time, AJ, despite losing, is still a massive commercial opportunity for Usyk. So I guess he looked at it and thought, well, if I beat him once, still a big money fight. I'm guessing the splits will, well, I'm not guessing, I'm pretty sure the splits will be very different. They'll be more in Usyk's favour, obviously, for the second fight. And he's thinking, well, if I beat the man once, I'll beat him again, and for more money. So, I can understand why it was done. It's just that generally it's not the done thing for mandatories.
But in terms of rematch clauses in general, you were saying before that you do put them in quite a few contracts. So in terms of defending them, it's something which is from a business point of view more than anything, isn't it?
Well, let me put it into perspective here. If you have a heavyweight world champion and you are giving Joe Bloggs the chance to box for that heavyweight world title, and it's a voluntary, you can choose Joe Bloggs, you can choose James Bloggs. Yeah, it doesn't really matter because it's a voluntary. If you give that person the opportunity as a promoter, as well as the boxer, that's an opportunity you're presenting. So you want to, and it's, by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean a rematch. You might earn on his future fights. They're called options. And, you might take 20% on his future earnings for the next 3 fights. That's not different to a football club selling on a player and having a resale clause. Yeah. So you give them the opportunity or her the opportunity, and they, they get sold on, and then you still are participating somewhere. You're not going to change that, because it's the way it works, and it works quite well. Yeah? In general, it works quite well. It doesn't slow things up from a perspective of the situation with Fury is a very, very, with Wilder last year with the arbitration hearing, was a very messy situation, I think. I think that fight was done, and it was very sad that it wasn't done. At the end, we ended up with a cracking third fight. We've got to say that as well. I definitely didn't think that would happen. It was a fantastic fight. Credit to Wilder for putting on that challenge, and Fury obviously stole the show. But in general, you won't see rematch clauses and option agreements as such going away, because the investment is made into world champions, that they carry the power, and if they're giving someone the opportunity, then of course in a business, and once again, boxing is not, it's not a business that's funded by the state or something. It's a business, and that's what it is. It's private money, and it's guys in that ring, guys and girls in that ring who are absolutely taking part in a high risk sport and need to be rewarded for that. So at the highest end, of course, they're going to take their their crust off if they lose. Whether they do that in a rematch clause or in future earnings.
Finally, I wanted to ask you about a tattoo which has been gathering some attention in recent days.
Yeah.
Is this a real tattoo that Briedis has of Jake Paul on his leg?
Well, I haven't seen him. I've just been in Africa, so I've just got back, and I have. He sent it to me the day before it went out, and I must admit, I didn't know what to say. I mean, he's a very jokey character. You mustn't misunderstand him. He's preparing now for his mandatory defense, which he has to do against Opataya, the Australian, very tough contender. He's earned the right to fight him. He's a 3-time world champion. So people out there saying, he's after. I was going to say Logan Paul, I forgot, Jake Paul, right? Shows how relevant he is to me. Yeah, right. He's a 3-time world champion who's won the World Boxing Super Series and unified the belts. Now, you can forget that part. Of course, he looks at it as a commercial opportunity. I said to him, Mairis, this guy is not going to fight you. Yeah, he wants, novice fights. He wants, retired superstars, preferably retired since a decade. That sort of thing. He's not looking for the top draw cruiserweight right now. And, I think it doesn't help if you go and go on YouTube and put in Mairis Briedis showreel knockouts. And I'm sure Jake Paul will look at that and run a mile. But the fact that he's got a tattoo done of it, whether it's fake or not, I've got to say, I saw it went quite viral and understandably so, but he's a character, Mairis, and I'm sure he'll keep on surprising us with more of those moments.
On that though, do you see that being a possibility? Is that going to be a fight that you're going to have to try and make in the next few months? Well,
listen, I'd love to make that fight. I'd jump on the first plane to New York to make that fight tomorrow, but it's not going to. I can't see it happening. I can't see Jake Paul suddenly going from wanting to fight Tommy Fury, who's from a great fighting family, but is a novice by his own admission, on his way up, and suddenly saying, "No, I don't want to fight a novice. I'd rather fight a 3-time world champion who's by any independent expert will tell you is the #1 cruiserweight on the planet." I would be very surprised, but yes, we are absolutely at the table, ready to do that fight. In fact, we'll do it Monday. We'll do it today in a week. No problem whatsoever. We'll even do it Sunday night with a jet lag, and a few burgers beforehand. Not a problem whatsoever. I mean, he can even do it as part of his training camp for the Opataya fight. Not an issue whatsoever. But that is the issue, and I'm sure that Jake Paul, who seems a bit savvy, he seems to know what he's doing in terms of risk reward. That is certainly very high on the risk and very low on the. Well, I'm sure it'll be high on the reward. He does do big. Jake Paul does big numbers. You can't get around it. We could all knock him, this, that, and the other, but he's certainly pulling in big numbers. How long that lasts for, I don't know. And it's natural, that he calls out boxers all the time. So he's got one who's gone and tattooed his name on his leg.